Alright guys, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to this community showdown. It's going to be the High Elves versus Nurgle, Renegade Moose versus the Skeleton Mage. Should be quite a bit of fun. Two factions that you don't see dueling quite often. I honestly can't remember the last time I've seen a High Elf versus Nurgle matchup here in domination mode, so let's have some fun and see how it goes. Now for the High Elf army, it is going to be Tyrion in the bushes. I like Tyrion actually. He does have decent sustainability with the Heart of Avalorn and really good stats. I always like... His sword is quite literally on fire. I mean, I understand maybe they didn't do it because they're like, oh, we want him to be more viable against Chaos Dwarves. But I mean, there's a lot of other matchups too, right? Like, I think like having the fire damage against like healing Nurgle, against vampire counts, against anyone that has access to healing really would be nice for Tyrion. But even still, he's a crazy good fighter, and Sunfang is also not bad at clearing out things like Plague Bearers or Exalted Plague Bearers. So if Nurgle comes in with like Festering Stooges, he can go in and just nail them with this like hard fire magic damage ability, which mitigates their healing and surpasses their demon resist. I do think Tyrion's actually not a bad choice here. Now, up in the sky, we have two monsters. We have the Arcane Phoenix and the Frost Phoenix. Arcane Phoenix would probably be my preferred choice in this matchup just because of the fire damage and the fact that it's just an absolute beast. Now, let's look at that stat comparison. 6.8 against 6.5. The Phoenix, I think, has slightly better offensive stats, but the fire damage is really, I guess, the big epicenter, and getting the Rebirth can honestly just be game-breaking at times. But yeah, the Frost Phoenix does have some decent like anti-blob, and Nurgle does like to fight in blob, so it will be lowering stats, and I believe does finally have the Haggard Chilling Aura, which was a meme for a long time. But yeah, it lowers your melee attack, your speed, making Nurgle even slower. But Nurgle will often go Soul Grinders and SEs and, you know, these kind of monster type things and cultists, which are very common. Like Nurgle opening up with like Kugath double cultist is super meta, or, you know, some sort of a cheap character like Festus double Soul Grinder to deal with Lothern Seaguard spam. Because a lot of High Elf players in the olden days would just go with like Mass Lothern Seaguard right here, right? And just like push up against Nurgle and, you know, live their best life. So having the Phoenixes as the tech against that, I think is good. Now we got Tyrion Chariots. These things were considered a meme for a long time. Probably still are. I'm not sure. We'll have to... One of my first games seeing them since the patch, which I did. They think they got some minor buffs, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, they do magic damage with their bows, and they are, like, in theory, supposed to be very good against like lightly armored infantry, which Nurgle usually brings a lot of like Marauders, Nurglings, Plague Bearers. So in theory, they could be good, right? So that's going to be it for the High Elf build. And out of the gates for Nurgle, it is going to be Marauders, and the big chunky boy in the back, the Exalted Great and Clean one, with the Fleshy Abundance. Stream of Corruption is just a great cheap spell. It has 100% armor piercing. It's really good against High Elf armor if you want to bring it. He's got a Mortis engine, a little bit more dynamic than Kugath. 36 movement speed compared to Kugath, who's somewhere in the 20s, and you know, not quite as tanky, but I'm a big fan of the Exalted Great and Clean. I think he's totally a viable choice. And like I said, Soul Grinders are there to counter archer play. Nurgle does not like being shot by archers and, you know, Sisters of Avalorn and Lothern Seaguard and things like that. So having the Soul Grinders to kind of mortar them down at range, I think, is a very good choice. But out of the gates, the dreaded Michael Bay lens flare hitting us. Sorry about that, guys. There's quite literally nothing I can do about that. But even still here, Tyrion Chariots just dropping some bowfire here on the Soul Grinder. Look at that, man. The MLG bowfire trying to get through the demonic armor of the Soul Grinders. What summons do we see coming out? We do see the Talons of Torquelada in the bushes, so they're hiding from the Soul Grinders now, which is smart. They do imbue fire weakness and do fire damage themselves, so like if somebody has like a Kugath sitting in the middle, you can imbue fire weakness, and that'll be giving you a 20% damage multiplier to your Arcane Phoenix, which does fire damage. So, you know, those things can add up. We've seen how powerful that is with Chaos Dwarf. So Nurgle being very conservative until the objectives open up, which is smart. You don't want to be advancing into enemy bowfire and whatnot until it's really, really crunch time and you can actually get some value on the objectives, right? Nurgle probably going to be summoning out some toads or maybe rot. I mean, the rot flies are much better now too. Looks like the Skeleton Mage going to be moving up. Soul Grinder maybe going to be pursuing. Honestly, you probably could just use the Soul Grinders and chase these things and not really care, as long as Tyrion's not nearby, because the Soul Grinders have pretty good armor, and you could also just heal them with the Exalted Great and Clean one. Whatever, right? At least keep them from hitting your infantry. So up on the high ground, we do get Ye Old Illyrian Reavers, and they're going to be heading up to Objective 1 to grab that. Nurgle going to be rolling to the side objectives here, so to 3 and to 2, but it looks like the High Elves are going to be claiming those initially. Reaver Cav aren't bad against Marauders. With good cycle charging, you can definitely wear them down, but in sustained combat, the Marauders obviously will win. And now Big Daddy Nurgle's going to be moving up in the middle, calling in the Plague Bearers. Could be a little bit vulnerable to the Arcane Phoenix aura. We'll have to see. I'm really curious how he's going to be using the Phoenixes this game. Like, look at the Exalted Great and Clean one. Have we discovered the new dreaded tech here? The Tyrion Chariots with their magic damage shots wearing down the big man. They've already done a considerable amount of damage. And yeah, we'll see what kind of work they can do here against the Marauders of Nurgle. So I would normally give you guys a nice cinematic shot here, but I do want to see the HP of these units as they get hit by the Chariot. So all of them are going to be going for the kill here. And not the best, not the worst. It's not like a Bear Chariot of Kislev, but like the Alpha Strike of this could break some leadership, and I like this a lot, right? Like all the mass Alpha Strikes over here, and then he uses the big tanky birds as a bit of a distraction Carnifex, which also happen to be able to fight back. That was actually a really, really slick play. Like, big charge on the Marauders while intercepting the Nurgle armor and mass that can come in and fight that stuff. That was pretty smooth. High ground is owned by the Elves. I would imagine we could see a Nurgling popping out. Beasts of Nurgle going to be anchoring the middle. I do like that. Beasts of Nurgle are weak to fire, but having them sit there and protect the infantry from Phoenixes abusing them isn't necessarily a bad idea. Sunfang going to be going down from Tyrion, so that's going to be nailing those bad boys. Here it comes. The birds are back in business, ladies and gentlemen, as a huge, huge roasting shot does go through those Marauders, and they are going to be getting cooked and terrified. But Nurgle does finally arrive, and this is what you want to do when you're playing against Nurgle, not fight them head up in a blob, especially if you're a mobile faction like High Elves. Now, we do see a lot of doggos coming out, Chaos Warhounds, which understandably does give Nurgle some mobility here. But the Tyrion Chariots could have issued an attack order and turned around, and yeah, look at that. They also get the Reavers, because dogs are infantry-sized, right? So the Chaos Warhound's going to be very, very vulnerable to the Tyrion Chariots and their anti-infantry bonus and the bow shots that are going to be coming off them. And you can see the Hounds there get absolutely buckled, as Renegade Moose just putting on a clinic here with these High Elf kind of mobility play. So Tyrion Chariots looping back over here as the Dreadlord Tyrion and his Arcane Phoenix fight the Great Unclean One, and actually seem to be doing some good work. Pox Riders of Nurgle on their way in. I do like the Pox Riders against High Elves now because they have good armor piercing. They can honestly fight and defeat Silver Helms most likely, and are pretty good against most of the infantry. A little bit vulnerable against missiles. Nice cast there by the Nurgle player, by Skeleton Mage. He does get a good stream of corruption as the blob fight continues. Rangers will do pretty well against basic Nurgle troopers. The Rangers have good combat stats. Bonus versus infantry, I believe, close to 10. Yeah, looks like it's 8. And they have 20% physical resist too, so that does help them in this kind of dueling situation. But the big man's in trouble. He does have the stinky Beast of Nurgle nearby, which is going to be debuffing the stats here. And Soul Grinders are pretty good fighters too. Fecundity going down, and yes, we do have the duel. Let's go ahead and get in there and get the glorious shot as Tyrion, the mighty High Elf champion. Got to be chasing back the big man as he farts in their general direction and runs away. Soul Grinder's able to run a little bit of interference. We do get the Fireborn coming out. Fireborn are a good choice. They're quite excellent with their anti-large against a lot of the Nurgle Toad spam, which is very meta now. They can get those sweet, sweet anti-large attacks and melt the toads very quickly. And look at that, the big Stinky is able to get away, and I would wager will be using Fleshy Abundances as much as he possibly can. He's also no longer on fire, so that is not going to be mitigating his healing in any way. But Tyrion's going in for it, baby. He's coming. He does get the Blight Swarm on him. Blight Swarm is going to be lowering his melee defense, but he still has 50. Tyrion has some really insane combat stats. The Exalted Great Unclean One does have a lot of HP, though. Still would not be an easy fight with Tyrion, so Tyrion's going to be calling in some help from the Arcane Phoenix, as the middle is taken by the forces of Nurgle, and the high ground is going to be grabbed by some Nurglings, perhaps, although Reavers will probably defeat Nurglings. Nurglings are pretty pitiful in combat, but they do okay. They're currently bugged right now where their damage output is really bad. It has something to do with the splash attacks. I don't know if it affects cavalry fights, so I'd have to double check that. Now, Nurgle could be a little bit happy with this. Getting Plague Toads on top of the Tyrannoc Chariots could be cost effective. Over on the side point, we do see Rangers fighting with the Fireborn, and the Frost Phoenix is in a hard 2v1 here, so Nurgle's starting to pull back on value a little bit, as the Beast of Nurgle will be a decent fighter, like I said, poisoning the bird. And the Soul Grinder is also quite solid. I mean, if you look at the stats, I mean, it's lowered right now, but still 34 melee attack, high melee defense, good weapon strength. Scary stuff. Fireborn could MVP it, though. Pox Riders of Nurgle still able to get some decent armor piercing against the Fireborn. Here in the backfield, Tyrannoc Chariots are being swarmed by the Furies, and they are infantry size as well, so the Chariots will be able to fight back okay. Tyrion's trying his best to drag down the Exalted Great Unclean One, but when we looked at his health a minute ago, he's gained health since last we looked. Granted, he's rapidly approaching his healing cap, so if the Great Unclean One goes down, he's really the centerpiece for Nurgle. The glue, the stinky glue that's going to be holding together the entire roster here. Rangers fighting well, but also are getting swarmed by Pox Riders, and we do have the Soul Grinder who has detached from this main fight, and he's going to be getting some terror routes perhaps on these guys. Some Nurgle forces, a little bit of housekeeping is needed there. Something that's very, very easy to forget when you're in like a super sweaty moment like this. In the middle, Lothar and Seaguard come in, and they just pound these Plague Bearers down. And look at this, the High Elf ambush. The Talons of Tor Kaleda coming out of the tree lines, imbuing Fire Weakness, and then Sunfang comes in. Oh, I love it, and that's going to be doing 20% more damage as well. So, a lot of archers coming out now that Nurgle's very, pitched up in fights, and they've summoned a lot of mobility here in this kind of epicenter of combat. It allows the archers to shine a little bit better. Nurglings over here, it seems the Nurglings didn't do bad against the Reavers in a straight-up fight. So maybe Nurglings are just bugged against enemy infantry. Because what I've seen in some testing is that they perform really bad against infantry, but maybe against, the Reavers, it's not so bad. It, has to do with the model count of the unit. It has something, it pertains to their splash attack value in some way. Yeah, that's why, Streltsy were terrible at combat in the previous patch as well. Soul Grinders here with a nice bombardment. We do see the value kind of closing a little bit with Nurgle's healing taken into account. This is probably actually becoming a really, really close game. Here we do see Tyrannoc Chariots getting routed back by the Soul Grinders. And the Tyrannoc Chariots have been useless this game. 1,200 value on that one is really good. This one's also gotten 1,300 value. So man, oh man, who would have thought? The new patch, man, bringing in a lot of fun things. I did like the Tyrion staying here and fighting. Tyrion sniping Soul Grinders is extremely cost effective. Oh my god, this banner with the Michael Bay lens flare is just like horrific. I'm so sorry about that. But here we get the two birds fighting the big man. The big man is healing caps, and Frostheart Phoenix is pretty tanky. Arcane Phoenix does have the potential of a rebirth ability. High ground fight going to the Nurglings. Wow, so he didn't cycle charge. A little bit of a lapse in micro. Definitely should have cycle charged back and forth. But I guess Nurglings don't have as many problems versus cavalry, which is nice to see. Oh, the Keepers of the Flame coming out. I love it. That is an anchor. Anti-large, magic damage against demons. It's kind of one of the reasons why like Dune Dragons aren't necessarily terrible against some of the demons. Depends on the matchup, of course. But I like Dune Dragons on Cathay against like Khorne, for example, with like Fleshhounds coming in and, occasionally Bloodletters. That magic damage can be very, very pertinent, right? So Plague Bear is getting worn down. Tyrion doing it, man. Going Super Saiyan. Able to drag down the Soul Grinder of Nurgle, which is going to be getting fecundity. But the Frostheart Phoenix also backing it up. Will be lowering its movement speed down really low, 44, so it's Frostbitten as well. That's kind of a cool synergy, right? Like the Frostheart and Tyrion, like with the mass slowing and Frostbite and Aura. That's pretty rad. So Toads on their way in. Lothar and Seaguard going to be pretty resilient. And the old Keepers of the Flame. Oh, nice cast by the Nurgle player. That was beautiful by Skeleton Mage. Wow, nice one. Hits the Keepers, also goes through the Lothar. Like the timing of that was like a moving unit. That's not like a super easy thing to pull off, right? So it looks like the Nurglings end up cackling and just barely winning the high ground fight, pushing these guys back. We are going to get some Lothar and Seaguard moving in, which should be able to clear them off pretty easily. And back Reavers, as well as Talons of Torquilada, swamped by Pox Riders, but I think that the Reavers might be able to finish the job. It's going to be pretty tight. In the middle, we have the Keepers of the Flame, but yeah, not a great situation for them. Armor-piercing Toads. The big Chungus, of course, is going to be a Mortis Engine, so the fact that the big man has lived this long is quite solid. Oh, look at him waving his bell up in the sky. Absolute beast. I think the Nurgle demons are so cool. Like the big ones, like the great unclean ones, they're just like so, like you really feel the weight of that unit when you use it, how truly thick they are. Fireborn, couple cav units probably need to be unsummoned in the Shadow Realm. Tyrion going to be on his way back in, going to be trying to salvage the middle situation. Keepers of the Flame, I mean, not doing bad considering. They're fighting like some really, really hard stuff. And here we do see the Beast of Nurgle being taken out, so good Phoenix play from our High Elf champion. He is able to move in, but Nurgle is a resilient man, and the Skeleton Mage, he has not heard any bell here. As Tyrion moves in to fight, like he's really going to want that rebirth, although the big man might just go down to the Talons of Torquilada. The fire damage really, really relevant here, and yeah, the Exalted Big Stinky could be in some serious danger depending on the heals, and more Reavers moving in as Nurgle is going to be getting some of its routing hounds that I think had routed off in the earlier fight, and probably on the edge of the map somewhere, and they are going to be colliding into the archers, which is big. That might save the Big Stinky, but it might be a little bit too late as well. He's at 1,000 HP, 700 HP. He's unstable, he's crumbling, he's a demon. That is not going to last long. So look at that, man. The Keepers of the Flame able to hold back the demons here in the middle. Beautiful stuff, beautiful stuff. And they almost paid for themselves too, despite fighting a giant Mortis Engine. High ground going to be taken by the High Elves as well. Looks like the Lothar and Seaguard able to kind of claim that. And Nurgle is kind of looking a little bit bare now. The Phoenix Goon Squad and Tyrion, like all on death's bed, right? Like if one of those had died, it's a completely different game. The fact that he was able to just barely keep all those going, looks like he has some Age of Life too, so he's probably been dropping some heals. But now what's probably going to happen is the Soul Grinder is going to get taken out. And yeah, the Phoenix Guard, though Toads did get an armor-piercing buff, these Keepers of the Flame are super elite halberds, and they will definitely tear apart these Toads, especially with the fact that they do magic damage. And you can immediately see the Toads are just dropping like super fast. And yeah, the no getting away here, super frostbitten. I mean, Tyrion's incredibly fast too, and the leadership's going to be tanking on the Soul Grinder, at least going back and forth in and out of stability as the dreaded Tyrion Chariots, man. Look at this thing. It hurt us making fun of it for a long time, but the Tyrion Chariots, they're going to keep going. They're not showing any mercy. Talons of Torquilada were stabilized. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this game's probably over. I would imagine, I didn't watch this one before. I didn't know the outcome, but I would imagine the Nurgle player is going to probably be tapping out here in a second. We do see the Soul Grinder going down, a couple Toads, but the High Elf Goon Squad is just too strong, and we could do a little bit of fast forwarding. And overall, that was a really fun build, man. I loved it, and good play on both sides. Like Nurgle, had some nice engagements, some nice micro here and there, some really good spell casts. The High Elf player, really, really nice gooning with his Phoenixes, and High Elves have always been kind of a faction, and like I find that if you try and play High Elves like heavy formation, although maybe times have changed, I'm not sure. Lothar and Seaguard got buffed and like really cost reduced, and then the cost reduced went back up, so I know High Elves have been doing a little bit better in land battle as well, but yeah, that was a great game, man. It was a cool build too. Tyranox, 1,500, 1,200, 1,400. That's really respectable. They're cheaper than that, right? So maybe it has to do with the magic damage shots, like poking a big monster, like a Nurgle monster. 4,800 on the big man. Oh my god, he was a raid boss that game. So yeah, he must have like single-handedly done most of the damage against these birds, right? Tyrion with 3,800 too. And the birds also with some hard carries. That was a really fun match. Well played to both players, man. Those guys are champs. Hopefully you enjoyed that one. we'll try and get some replays. I know oftentimes on the channel it can be replays of the factions I play a lot. So I'm going to try and like get some action of factions that I don't necessarily main or play, and we'll but if you're not, there'll be plenty of Empire. Don't you guys worry. But that's going to be it for tonight. Take care of yourselves.